Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Wow, we've been talking about it this week already. The speaker's race just is collapsing. As we tape this message, we are still without a speaker. And hopefully that's going to change pretty soon, and we'll see what happens. At this point, I can't tell you it's going to be Kevin McCarthy. Can't tell you it's going to be anything else. But you know what? That's why you tune into the Doug Collins podcast. And we're going to talk about what these things actually mean in this first week of what normally is a quiet week in Congress is now turning into a battle that has been brewing for a while. I'm only going to touch on it because I may actually do a little bit more on this because I want you to understand the depth here. I have seen so many bad takes by non-member or former members of what's going on the Hill. It's just very frustrating. I'm going to be frank with you. We hear all of this that, you got to get behind Kevin. You don't have to get behind Kevin. You got to do this. And we start with this idea of what's actually happening. The realization here, and I hit on the speaker's race the other day, pretty heavy. I'm not going to revisit all of that. But the problem we've got now is this has revealed what has always been under the surface in the Republican conference for about the last 12 years. Let's go back to all the way 2010 and move forward. And this conservative group that was brought in and won the election, and let me remind you who the leadership was when they won all these seats. It was John Boehner, Eric Cantor, Kevin McCarthy. And Paul Ryan was their educational leader, if you would, their policy wonk, whatever you want to call it. They were the young guns. And that might, as I think about this, this could be the title of this, What Happened to the Young Guns? And because this group of almost 80 new members of the Republican Party came in on the heels of Obamacare, the heels of Dodd-Frank, the heels of all the climate change stuff, and we're going to change the world literally. And came into a being in which the House, the Senate were not of the same party. The Republicans did not own the Senate, and they did not have the White House. And reality struck quickly. The problem was nobody wanted to admit it. And this has festered now for years. While I was there, I can't tell you how many times we had conference meetings in which you had 5, 6 of the members who wanted to go a specific tactical route that didn't match the necessary of the strategy, and you had fights about tactics. I mean, we had these over and over and over again. The Trump years suppressed some of that. It was still there. Don't get me wrong. There was a suppression from many conservative members, and there's a difference here. There's conservatives that that are very conservative like myself who still tried to get things done. We may have disagreed at times with what the end result looked like, but we took within the package what we could get without compromising our moral beliefs or our discussion. Then you had some who just believe that there is only one route, that if you push hard enough, yell loud enough, that everybody will come to your agreement. Sometimes that works. I think there needs to be a balance sometimes in the sense that we don't push hard enough in the Republican side of the House to bet our best foot forward going to the Senate. And I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. But all along, it became more of a name calling. Remember, you're a part of this group, you're a part of that group, you're a Tuesday group, you're a Freedom Caucus, you're a mainstream, you're a Rhino. Look, at the end of the day, I am amazed that I hear actual people who are, that are libertarians call in our Republican Party who are not, pro-life, and others who call other Republicans rhinos. At a certain point in time, folks, let's just get along and say that we're a conservative agenda. Some are more conservative than others. That's what the Democrats tend to do. And at the end of the day, they try to get stuff done. So we're here at the end of the week. As you hear this here on a Friday morning, we may or may not have a speaker. I'm assuming we're going to. But what does this actually reveal about the new Republican majority? It is revealing something that I have said to you now for almost the last year on this podcast, is that Republicans, and I've talked about it as you've heard me talk to guests, is Republicans have to be more honest in their communication with the voters. They have to be more honest with communication about what can get done, what can't get done, and what would be a long shot in getting done. I've said this before, for all those folks who said, we're going to impeach Joe Biden. Well, what does that actually get you? Because now, even last time, there was no way it was going to happen in the last Congress. In this Congress, if you were able to scrape by enough votes, by the way, you probably won't with some of the members who were elected in districts that Joe Biden actually won. So you only have 4 to play with. This 5 number, if you want to count it as 5, cuts both ways. And the real conservative line is you got to do this. Every Republican should vote for it. Well, no, not every Republican will. And on the opposite side, you're going to have those who believe that you should just compromise at the drop of a hat, and you're going to have others who are not going to do that too. This makes for a very difficult governing situation. This is where there's been my fear of the Republican majority being so close. Democrats did this remarkably well. And I know some of you don't want to hear this, but Pelosi and her team, given the fact that Democrats tend to fall in line, she had the ability to keep her group in line. She could give out the passes, the 4 vote passes or whatever she needed to those who really couldn't take the vote or didn't want to take the vote. They became irrelevant. She still got her 218, 217, whatever she needed to pass the bills. This is where the difference comes. And this is why this week is so, I think, could either be a make or break week for the Republican caucus in the United States House. They could either come out of this with a better understanding that not all of them are going to agree, that they need 218, and if you can't come to a compromise and get 218 and make progress, then maybe you're the problem. Okay, just throwing that out there. If you're going to be so hardline that you cannot come to a legislative compromising body and actually compromise, then maybe there's a problem. Now, I'm not going to discount what the members who are against Kevin this week have said. In fact, I agree with a lot of it. They need to be more transparent. There needs to be more things that are done so that members can have more involvement. But I also will remind these members that when some of these are done, many of the same members get frustrated at the fact of having to be on the floor to vote, having to do other things, because it takes time away and more time in Washington, D.C. Now, if that's what they're looking for, they're going to get it. And I'm not going to say that's a bad idea. And getting it out of the membership offices and leadership offices and into more of a conference-wide community setup in the committee setup is the best thing to do it. But there are consequences to that. That means you're not going to get out on 12 o'clock on Thursday or Friday. It means that there are going to be votes later in the evening. It means that you're going to have Monday through Fridays, not Monday through Thursdays or Tuesday through Friday. There's things that inherently for that, which is not bad. Don't hear me wrong here. It's not bad, but it's just it's the consequence. That's a good thing. How you deal with that, that'll be where the next steps go. What this concerns me is if they cannot come together this week and this drags out, or if it drug out even more than a day or two, is the hurt feelings, the hurt discussions, the hurt plans that have come in what we now see is a majority that frankly is not a majority. I told you this has come along and been a problem in our party, in our conference for a long time. And in doing so, I think this is maybe this is the battle that needed to happen. Do I think Kevin McCarthy is going to get caught up in this and has gotten caught up in it in a bigger than Kevin moment? Yes, I do. Now, has Kevin probably not done everything he could to at least have seen this coming? Probably not, because he was expecting a much bigger majority. Now think about this. If we'd have gained the 30, 35, 40 seats that we thought, then we would have had a majority of 25, 30 seats, and this doesn't matter. They could have voted, 30 of them could have voted no on the floor, and you still become speaker. But when it's only a 4-vote majority, that's when your problem is. So let's fast forward. What this has revealed is, again, tactics and strategy. Strategy is the overall plan. Tactics are how you get there. And the problem we fight with so many times, as opposed to the Democrats who see a strategy and they say it doesn't matter what tactic we use, just get to the strategy. Republicans are more hung up on the idea of let's use this procedural vote. Let's use this procedural means, or let's do it this way and then try to force everybody to our position. And whether we get to the strategy or not is really irrelevant. If we don't fix that, then we're going to have a more pressing problem when we finally get past this week. Because when this week comes, then we're going to finally get a speaker. It's not going to go on forever. We're going to get a speaker. We're going to have committees assigned. We're going to actually get to the start of what many had hoped they would even started this week. And that was, a symbolic vote to get rid of the 87,000 IRS agents that was put into the Bill Back Manchin bill earlier this year. Now, will that bill pass the Senate? Not a chance. But it does stake out a position from the House Republicans that we are going to be on the side of people. We're not going to be on the side of government. That's why this matters. So be ready. As the airplanes, many times you'll be flying an airplane. The captain will come on and say, okay, folks, we've got a little bit of turbulence coming up. We'll ask you to return to your seats and strap and make sure your seatbelt is secured, fastened around your waist. Why? Because that unexpected rough air is now expected rough air. And I'm just laying it out here on the podcast that this is more than just expected rough air. This is rough air. And if we don't prepare for it, can it be a cleansing moment? Yes. Can it be a destructive moment? Yes. And I am so fearful that this becomes a moment in which bonds, friendships, and parties, alliances are frayed to an extent in which you can't get a lot of things done. Because, folks, in the future, you're going to have immigration. You're going to have the budget. You're going to have appropriations bills. And let me just warn you right now, as a conservative Republican telling you, if Republicans in the House cannot put 12 bills together, here's your key. And I've said this all along on this podcast. I've been critical of this on both parties. Whoever the speaker is, let's just say it's Kevin, should start the appropriations process with Kay Granger. They ought to pass out all 12 bills, even the ones you have trouble with. Yes, even the ones of HHS where you're having to deal with tough issues like abortion and mental health spending and other things, where you have to deal with CJR and you're dealing with Homeland Security and immigration. Find a way, get those to the floor, and find 218 votes to pass them. If the House does not pass with 218 votes, pass the 12 appropriations bills, then, folks, I will tell you right now, in September of this year will be a CR and eventually will be an omnibus. Mark my words. Now, you can say, well, Doug, that's going to happen anyway because the Senate won't take any. Well, it won't happen until one side or the other actually, ponies up, gets to the table, and passes all 12. And if the House passes all 12 to the Senate and Schumer sits there and doesn't pass any, then it's a clear distinction for the American people coming up in 2 years on what they need to do with the United States Senate. Now, If they do pass their bills and you start having conference committees, pass the conference committees. Find ways to get to 218 so that the American people can see that the Congress is actually working. This is going to be tough. It's going to be hard. And it's going to go against some of the folks who said, I will never vote for. If you've been an I'll never vote for and it's a non-moral issue, then you're going to have some issues coming up. But this is the way that we got to get through this. Could this be a cleansing moment? Yes, it could be a cleansing moment. Could it be a destructive moment? Yes. And at a certain point in time, you've got to truly decide, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a procedural purist, or do you want to actually get things done, or can you have both? I think you can have both, but you got to be willing to do it on both sides. Somebody has to take the first step. Why not the new House Republicans passing all 12 appropriations bills, passing an immigration bill, passing a border security bill, passing a budget that actually addresses inflation, passing an energy plan that actually works, and not everybody nitpicking the bills to death to where they can't get to 218. You got to put the best foot forward and then move on. That leads me to my next hot take for this first week. One of the most sad and frustrating pictures I've ever saw was George Santos yesterday on the floor of the House. I had been asked about Mr. Santos on several occasions on what I felt. It's up to him to decide how he handles this. I think he has to understand that he has completely eviscerated what career he might have had by lying to his voters, by lying to himself, by lying to anybody willing to ask about basic things in your life, all the way down to where you went to high school. You have basically set yourself up in Washington, D.C. to be, for lack of a better term, useless. Nobody's going to want to deal with you. Nobody's want to come close to you. If the membership has seated you, they'll give you an office. They may give you committee assignments, and you can go do those things. But at the same point, as far as impacting, no. In a small majority, you do have a vote, Mr. Santos. You can vote, and you will be impactful. Will that help Republican causes in some of these votes? Probably so. But overall, does it really help? I'm not sure. In fact, at some point, this has got to stop. I have been on shows and talking to folks this week, and I've been accused of, well, Doug, you're asking him to make a choice that we don't ask for Elizabeth Warren or Blumenthal or Joe Biden or all these others who've lied about their. That's fine. That's their part. They've got to live with that. But we as Republicans, when we point that out and then we turn a blind eye to one of our own who basically lied about everything, including almost his ethnicity, then you got a problem. I don't get it. Well, I'd rather have the vote. Okay, then fine. You'd rather have the vote. Then don't hand me the moral integrity crap anymore. Okay, just don't. I'm willing to, if that's the rules, I'll live by them. Believe me, I've been talking about this for a while in elections. Republicans have to play by the same election rules that are legal that Democrats do. And if we don't do that, that's our own fault. But I don't really want to hear another Republican talking about the lies of the administration, the lies and the falsehood of Elizabeth Warren and calling her names and Blumenthal and his Vietnam service and everything else. Again, you really don't have a leg to stand on if Mr. Santos continues to sit. Now, it's his choice. Only the voters really can get rid of him at this point, because I don't think it would put the Republicans in a bad seat to kick out one of their own, especially in a seat that could actually go back to the Democrats. I get it. I get the practical side of this. But at what point in time are we going to turn this country around and turn the ethical arguments back to our side, which we have tried so long to talk about, if we're not willing to do it? My last 2 years in Congress, I sat and just yelled and at the wind many times because the Democrats didn't want to hear that procedures and rules matter. It's the only thing that binds the House Representatives together, because it is a unruly 435-member majority rules body. And if you don't have rules, if you don't have procedures, if you don't have those things, which is what is being fought about right now, then you develop into chaos. So for those of you who are offended by what I'm saying, I'm sorry. But take a close look in the mirror. Is it really worth saying they did it too? Or somebody got to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. And understand that Mr. Santos has no career in Washington right now. Could he eventually? Who knows? I don't think he'd get reelected, but that's for the people of New York to decide. So again, as I said about the Congress and putting forward appropriations bills, somebody has to start. Why not them? Mr. Santos and the Republicans, you got a situation here. Why not start here? because this goes against the grain of those of us who want to see a cleaner, more ethical run Washington, D.C. And look, I feel for Mr. Santos, have no idea why he would do what he did. But at the end of the day, this is a problem and will continue to be a problem for the Republicans. And don't give me, they did it too. Somebody has to stand up and say, yep, they did it. They've got to answer for that. We're going to answer for where we can. And that's what actually happens. I was reading another thing here, and I like to do this sort of catch up on a Friday sometimes. I have always said that and we've talked about the Biden administration just eviscerating the energy independence that we had here in America. I've always said that the government is not the best function of private enterprise to turn us from this and to try and push electric cars, to push other things onto the process. That given time and given the market, that this would actually begin to happen. And one of those things is actually happening. Dodge has announced, and for those of you who like muscle cars, and there's so many of you out there who do, because you like, especially if you're outside of a big city, you like to have these cars that go fast. Talladega Nights, go fast, Daddy, go fast. Well, people like to go fast. I mean, it just is. But the last V8 muscle car is Dodge is getting ready to announce their last one. The Challenger and Charger will be discontinued at the end of 2023 model year, and they will be replaced by the all-electric Charger Daytona SRT. Now, it's still going to move, don't get me wrong. But for those who like the old sound of the internal combustion engine and the performance, the Hemis, the Hellcats, V8s are gone. So, look, they're making a concerted effort to say, look, people will buy these. They're going to, this is what's going to be happening. Dodge is going to make a killing on putting some of these as special editions, and they're going to develop only a few and sell them, and they'll make a lot of money on these last big motor editions. For these cars. But again, this is where it should happen. If Dodge sees this as a flop, they may have to go back and, hey, we want people who really wanted the internal combustion V8 engines, these big engines in these cars. But this is the decision that the company is making, not government. And I know that you're saying, well, California is going to require in 2035 and all this stuff. I get it. But this is where it needs to be made. You need the Teslas, you need the electric car companies of the world to make their case. You need the other companies and the consumers to say, here's what I like. I've said before, we have a hybrid in our house, and we love it. And probably will buy another hybrid. Why? Not because the government told me I should, or not because the folks said the end of the world is coming. It was because it's a great car and it gets great gas mileage, and I enjoy the savings. That's the way free market ought to work. And as we look at this, I just thought it would be appropriate to point out that Dodge is doing away with the Challengers and the others here to go to an all-electric vehicle. It means the last of the big engines are going away from one of the companies that has made a lot of emphasis on the muscle car market. That brings me to my last point for this week in this podcast, and that is I was watching Monday night in the football game. My wife and my daughter and I, we were doing our normal Monday night football. We were watching, and all of a sudden we see Damar Hamlin make a tackle, stand up, and fall completely out. We then watched with so many and prayed with so many after the fact for him as they worked on him, and we found out that he was even worse than we had thought. But he, as of the taping of this podcast, is beginning to make at least some progress. I just wanted to emphasize, number one, that the prayers of all are going forward to make sure that hopefully he gets better, and we hope it does. But it also is a reminder for all of us at the beginning of the year. We talk about this at the end of the year, but somehow the first of the year always jumps up and gives us a reminder. Life is short. Life is hard. And we have to live each day. And we're praying for the absolute best for Mr. Hamlin and his family. I pray full recovery. And like I said, at the tape in this podcast, it does seem to say he is getting better. But just as a reminder to all of the podcast listeners, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you're going to make this new year look like. Go to the DougCollinsPodcast.com and hit that little email button and email me what you look to do in the new year. But I hope this will be a reminder of not a game that is vicious, which we knew it was, and it goes on, and these men who are out there who work so hard do such a great job. It's a reminder of all of us in our life that each day is not promised. We are not promised the same as we have today, better or worse, but we are promised that this life is from God. It is His, and we're His. And I think that's something that we need to be reminded of. So go out today. If you're listening to this podcast, you're exercising, driving around, wherever you may be, find 2 or 3 people in your life that you need to tell them you love them. Do a couple of things you've been putting off and saying, I'll do that tomorrow. Sometimes events like this remind us we may not have tomorrow. And if it's that important, do it today. Folks, that's it for this week on the Doug Collins Podcast. Glad you joined us. Please tell your friends about us. New year, subscribe onto the button. Send the links to your friends. Let's continue to build the Doug Collins Podcast Nation. Love to have you as a part. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Hey folks, MyPillow is excited to bring to you their biggest bedding sale ever. For a limited time, you're going to get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, a set of pillowcases for only $9.98, and rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. $99.99. Get a mattress pillow topper. Look, they come in all sizes. They got all kinds of stuff. Blankets. They've got duvets. They've got quilts. They got comforters. They got body pillows. They got bolster pillows. They got all that big discounts. And also, they're extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1, 2023, making them the perfect gift for your friends, your family, and for everyone you know. Folks, and just from a personal note here, I have the Giza Dream sheets. They're on my bed right now. I slept on them last night. Some of the best sheets that we and Lisa and I have ever owned. They are worth, at this price, they're a steal. My wife and I have bought bed sheets, linens at much higher cost. It's supposedly much higher quality. These from MyPillow are at the highest of quality, and at a price like this, you can't beat it. So go now to MyPillow.com, use promo code Collins, COLLINS, or call 1-800-986-3994, and you'll get huge discounts on all the MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, and get all your shopping done while qualities last. And remember, put in that promo code Collins for these discounts.